In 5, 4, 3, 2. All right, here we are. David Wheatley's podcast, episode 25. And we are rolling. We are definitely rolling. Whether those people are rollers upstairs or not, we are rolling. Thank you to all of you for listening to as many podcasts in this series as you have. Today's topic is long-term planning, which is the business version. And the holistic version is called visioning or visions. I'm going to move the mic just a little bit closer. There we go. So when I tell people that I'm playing music, they say something like, isn't that great? You've known what you wanted to do your whole life. And I almost want to put quotes around this, stuck with it. And I have stuck with it. And I think it's been the curiosity about music that has carried me along. Speaking of waves to get going with or be driven by, that curiosity has been a big part of my musical pursuits and visioning. So then the person says, wow, I wish I had a vision. I, being the other person, said, well, what are you curious about? What have you stuck with for a long period of time? Or they'll say, David, you're so creative. And I said, well, everybody's creative. I said, well, how do we know that? Well, have you ever come across a traffic jam on the freeway and decided to get on the off-ramp or off on the off-ramp? And you pull over to the side and you're in some neighborhood. I'm trying to be complimentary. In a neighborhood where you've never been. And then you're trying to find your way around the jam and then get back on. And if you ask yourself the question, I wonder what would happen if, that's creativity in the creative process. And while we don't have traffic jams all the time in the same place, where that question gets answered forever, it's possible to ask the same question. I wonder what would happen if we recorded 25 podcasts. I wonder what would happen if we booked this studio instead of another studio, or worked with this engineer or that engineer. I wonder what would happen if we talked about this topic or went from valuing an asset into vacations, into long-term planning and visioning. What would that be like? What kind of dissonance would that create? Cognitive kind? And where would that dissonance propel me and everybody involved in this project onto the next podcast? So long-term planning is a commitment to visioning as far into the future as possible. When Akio Morita, the former CEO or maybe present CSO of Sony in Japan, was asked if they had a business plan, he said, yes, we have a business plan. And when they asked him the follow-up question, like journalists like to do, how long is your business plan? He said 75 years. And so I think most people are lucky to know what they're going to do that day or maybe an hour later. Some people will have a year. Some people make a business plan or a life plan that goes to a year, and then they sit back and don't do it because they envisioned it in their mind. They don't have to do it. But as I mentioned in the last episode about vacations, there's a difference between doing a Google search on a particular city and actually going there. So I support the deeper involvement and connection. And the same thing with the long-term plan. It's also been said if you have long-term goals that you can work your way back from the goal. It's possible by not having a long-term goal that a person can cook along now and end up somewhere that they didn't really want to end up, like getting on a Greyhound bus in Canada where it's cool to ride the bus. Well, maybe not that cool. And finding out that you're actually at the wrong city. You wanted to end up in Montreal and you ended up in Vancouver. But if you start with the destination of Vancouver, you go up to the ticket window and said, I like a bus to Vancouver, then they give you the bus ticket and you end up in Vancouver. So it's better for destination and destiny. See how that got tied in? We need to have a keyboard here so I can play a chord. I can play a C7, sharp 9, with a normal 9 against it. Can everybody visualize that? Spreading out all the notes. Make it more polytonal. When's this going to get back to music? Right there, it got back to music. So long-term planning, it said that by having a long-term plan, it makes the short-term decisions easier, which is, if we're going to go to Vancouver, do we want to take this side trip to Montreal? No, we don't. Want to go to Vancouver? How do you feel about stopping off at Winnipeg? Fine, on the way to Vancouver. Sounds good. Short-term decision made based on long-term goals. It's also possible to change the long-term goals, but I'd rather not go there for this podcast because it makes it way too complicated. But assuming that Vancouver is the goal, everything else falls into place. And that first step, there's that phrase that the longest journey begins with a single step. And also back to the 4 qualities of an entrepreneur action, that taking that first step, buying that ticket, is enough to let the world know that you're in action going to Vancouver. And in a good, defiant way, everybody has to deal with that. Just heard a motorcycle go by. So we have the clompers, the rollers, and the motorcyclists. And we'll come up with a better name for that. With motorcyclists, you definitely want to be complimentary of motorcycles because they do travel in packs. So I don't want to reference one particular pack over another because in my mind, they're all okay with me. Okay with me. Long-term planning, I think the 12-month goal needs to be revolving. So if the plan is made on January the 1st to December 31st, when we move to February the 1st, then the plan needs to be revised out to January 31st of the next year. So it's continually out 12 months. Reason for this is it's possible, as I've done many times, to make a plan for January 1st to December 31st and to find myself on December the 15th saying, well, better do another plan. And then Christmas is happening and all sorts of holiday distractions and in life enhancements, and instead end up in the first week of January with no plan. So it needs to be revolving, and it's worth it to take the time, especially because an observant person will have learned a lot in that January month that will affect what's going to happen in January of the next year. Which brings us to extrapolation, otherwise known as trends. I think the future is largely predictable based on probability. Probability is bankable. We say, well, it's 80% sure that we're going to have 340 days of sunshine in LA. In fact, I'd even raise the 80 to 98% sure, certain we're going to have 340 days of sunshine in LA. So that's probability. This is different than likelihood, which is, well, it's likely that this many people are going to come on vacation to LA. It could be over a year, 500,000, but it might be 300,000. It's not as bankable. That's why I like probability, and that's why I like estimates. We talked about measuring the table, that estimates are important. Visioning. This takes us in a Carl Jung level and Freud level into the subconscious that is directing a lot of our behavior, emotions, and thoughts. Unknown to us, unbeknownst to us, this activity is going underway. And this part of the brain, I like to differentiate between brain, which is medical, and mind, which is more holistic. This part of the mind generates ideas and chords like that one I said with that C7, with the +9 and the 9 going against it to create some dissonance to express that. Where did that chord come from? It just came. It came out of that part of my mind. And the outlet for that, the technical part of it is having studied that with Gordon Delamont and seeing it written down, seeing other people use it. But the touchy-feely part is the way it makes me feel to think about it and to play it, and what that can convey, and being able to just lay it down. While cancel culture is a factor, I don't want to be going through my life having to be concerned about being canceled for a court or canceled for anything else. Just put it out there. And if the number of views of the podcast gets up very, very high, then the likelihood of attracting the attention of competition will grow. I think one of the reasons that there isn't as much competition in the arts is because arts councils give money, and they're often populated by decision makers who are in the same field. So you don't want to antagonize and tick off everybody in your field. And also, when it comes to voting for awards, a lot of the people that vote for specific categories are competitors or potential competitors of the nominees. So, people are going to want to be cool with everybody, at least respectful, and if it's going to be a rivalry, it should at least be a friendly rivalry. And often people will appear on the same panel. Not many people do podcasts where they present as much inside information as I'm presenting. But in a way, I'm happy to do it, to say what I've learned so far and my thoughts are on this particular date. But things are going to be different tomorrow, at least within a range, within a probability I can estimate that they're going to be different. And so the podcasts that unfold from here will rely on prior podcasts and also other parts of my life and experience, which are unique to me in terms of the composite of those experiences. And everybody else's will be different and unique to them. And I look forward to hearing their podcasts or meeting them at a party. So this is episode, whatever it is, 25. 5 times 5 is 25. It's not whatever it is in terms of dissing my own podcast, because I think this is a good one too. I don't really know till I play them back later, but it's really good to play them back. DavidWheatley10@gmail.com. I wish you well with your long-term planning. Getting a degree that takes 4 years is long-term planning. Buying some real estate that then goes under for a while, where it's worth less than you paid, less than you owe. All right, the slammers are here. We have a fourth category, everyone. To long-term plan and have it work out. That's advanced thinking, and I wish you well with that. I wish you a lot of that. I like it when people get what they want. We should keep that going. So I gave the email address, patreon.com. Please give giant amounts. When they say small amounts are okay, they are okay, but barely okay. We really want big amounts. So if you're going to send us dough, think big. May your long-term plans think big. And may you join us on future podcasts to see where this leads. I look forward to hearing from you. With thanks to everybody who helps make these possible. Logging off for now.